Zack Snyder's Justice League, the Snyder Cut, is finally out, and yeah, I mean, this has probably been the holy grail of director's cuts as far as mainstream movies are considered since I don't know Blade Runner when that they finally released the director's cut of that in the late '80s. So yeah, people have been dying to see this movie, and like it dropped today after a accidental pre-release, we'll call it about a week ago. This is the first day it's widely available. And yeah, I wanted to see this, and I am off tonight, so I'm awake at 4 a.m. So I burned through the whole movie, I finished it, and I got some thoughts, and my thoughts begin with, well, does this movie equal the sum of its parts? Mm, I don't think it does. Does that make it a bad movie? No, but it does make it probably a better miniseries. See, this movie has, frankly, the issue that most of Zack Snyder's movies have, which is that once you get past how good looking it is, there is a very serious problem with creating narrative flow. With the movie kind of moving forward at a legitimate pace, with it building, with there being momentum, this movie doesn't have much of that. The first hour and 40 minutes of this movie really felt like I was binge watching a TV show. It was a whole lot of exposition, a whole lot of introducing this idea, introducing that element, introducing this character, long ass backstory, big flashback, but it wasn't a lot of actually moving the plot forward. It kind of reminded me of the problem people had with Suicide Squad, where in the whole first almost hour of that movie is just introducing each individual character rather than integrating their introductions into the narrative so you can have a narrative that builds upon itself, naturally introducing characters as you go along. That's kind of what this movie does. But the thing is that it does it so well that honestly I almost have a hard time getting mad about it. Because, Aquaman, he has some great moments to introduce him, particularly that scene where he always getting drunk after saving the fisherman. That scene played so much better here than it did in the Joss Whedon version. In the Joss Whedon version, it was like this dumbass joke you'd see on a CW show. Here, it actually tells you something about the character. It resonates, which is a lot better. The introduction of the Flash, which wasn't in the Joss Whedon version at all, is really good. It's a really solid way to introduce that character, and I like the way Zack Snyder visualizes the Flash's powers. They're really cool. It's this cool lightning effect where he moves in very jittery, jumpy motions. Ezra Miller. I know some people think this guy is kind of annoying. I'm not really a big fan of the Flash as a character, so I don't really know what he's supposed to be like. But I thought he brought a good he has a good sense of comic timing, and his wisecracks and one-liners are toned way down here. You lose a lot of that what people call Whedon speak, meaning he doesn't feel like this is a joke someone would write on Twitter. It feels a lot more natural and it feels a lot more organic to the situations. So all that is working better. As far as individual sequences go, there aren't a lot of scenes in this movie that are in the Joss Whedon version, and the few that are very different. A big example would be the early scene where Steppenwolf attacks the Amazons. That scene in the Joss Whedon cut is a CGI whatever. That happened. Here it has a lot of weight. It has a lot of gravity. And I'm not even someone who saw the original Wonder Woman movie. I don't know that much about that. I saw a supercut of the Wonder Woman sequel, but I haven't even seen that whole movie. Someone cut like a 30-minute version of Wonder Woman 1984, and I watched that instead of watching the whole movie because I just didn't care that much because everyone hated it. But yeah, that works really well. You have a lot of like heroism and sacrifice. Connie Nielsen from Devil's Advocate and Gladiator is doing a good job as the leader. And of course, you have Steppenwolf, who is exponentially improved. There is not even a comparison. Steppenwolf in Justice League was a CGI bad guy, and that is all the hell he was. Here, he actually has a backstory, he has motivations, and he seems intimidating and frightening. He seems like an apocalyptic event as opposed to just a bad guy. And that was a big problem with the Joss Whedon Justice League is that it didn't seem like this was all that important of an event. It just seemed like another bad guy had come to Earth. It seemed like something we'd seen a million times. And even though this movie's plot is essentially any superhero movie's plot, which is bad guy wants a thing, superheroes have the thing, and they have to keep the bad guy from getting the thing because he'll use it to destroy the world. It's like three-quarters of superhero movies plot lines, and that's why I kind of find superhero movies kind of boring and repetitive. But this movie, it sidesteps that. And the funny thing is that the people who complain about the DCEU are going to complain about this movie. This is not going to win them over because this is doing all the things that they hated. It's dark, it's serious, it's dramatic. But I like that because I actually care. There are moments in this movie that have real stakes in them. And the first battle the superheroes had with Steppenwolf, which was also in the Joss Whedon version, but didn't really mean anything. It was just CGI, CGI, fight, 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 done. Here, there's really tension to it, and you really feel like they're struggling and they're fighting and they're getting their asses handed to them and they're trying to save these people that have been kidnapped. It has a lot more gravity to it and it means more. And that's just one of many very good sequences in this movie. But as far as that goes, I found myself checking out in between scenes hardcore. Like, I was like, I kind of need to put some clothes away. I haven't checked my emails today. And a tighter cut of this movie would have made all the difference. Now, I'm not someone who cares if a movie is long or short. The Godfather, 3 hours. Don't cut a minute of that movie. I love that movie. I have the longest version there is of Once Upon a Time in America, which is north of 4 hours. Like, I do not mind a long movie if it needs to be long. But see, this movie should have been tightened, and it should have been about an hour long, shorter than it is. And you could cut that from a lot of little scenes. You could shave a lot of little pieces down. But this movie is too long in its first half, and like I said, I just found my attention drifting. Now, once we get past the first half, once you get to the first battle with Steppenwolf, it picks up and it actually has a narrative drive, but there's no narrative drive to the first hour and 40 minutes of it. It's just introduction, 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 introduction. So because of that, there are a lot of great moments in that first hour and 40 minutes, but that should have been condensed way the hell down. So, yeah, as far as this being this epic, I mean, it feels epic, but with the money, with the star power, with everything, it should, and it would be embarrassing if it didn't. The cast is doing a good job, of course. Jason Momoa's Aquaman is very entertaining in all his scenes. Ben Affleck's Batman is good, although the movie doesn't do a great job. Weirdly, Ben Affleck and Gal Gadot are the leads, and they keep kind of receding into the background in a weird way. It's almost like they're obligatory. They're there to hold the movie together. Because really, this movie hinges heavily on Ray Fisher's cyborg character, who was a really kind of a minor, forgettable part of the original Justice League. And they screwed him and Joe Morton, who gets to play the guy from Terminator 2 again. I mean, that's basically he's almost literally playing Charles Dyson, the character he played in Terminator 2, all over again. And he's this well-meaning scientist whose research is being corrupted without his knowledge, who's working on a doomsday project essentially without even knowing it. And he's a good man doing something bad without knowing it, kind of like Einstein's formulas were being used for the atom bomb. So yeah, Joe Morton and Ray Fisher really got screwed in the Whedon cut of Justice League because their characters were so forgettable in that movie. But here they are. The movie hinges on them. I mean, Joe Morton actually gives the voiceover that the movie closes on, for God's sake, and they're good. And the CGI on Ray Fisher's cyborg is so much better. In Justice League, it was distractingly bad. It was like his head was floating in a mask of CGI. The proportions were off. Like sometimes his face would be framed like this. Sometimes it was like this, and it was awful. It was so bad. Here the CGI, I mean the CGI is not revolutionary, but it's actually really rare these days to see great CGI. I don't know why that is. But it is a cool design. And again, Steppenwolf's armor is kind of cool. It has these spikes on it that make him look really intimidating because it's like, okay, punch him and you're skewering your hand. So that was cool. The special effects are solid. All around, it's not bad. It's just that this needed a tighter edit, and it needed to find a way to integrate the people that are the top three actors better. Because again, Ben Affleck and Gal Gadot, it feels like they're obligatory. It doesn't feel like they're moving the plot forward in a lot of ways. With Ben Affleck essentially being a shot caller and Gal Gadot not really having anything to do until it's time to fight. Then Henry Cavill, who is a glorified cameo in this movie, I actually think he's in this movie less than he was in Joss Whedon's cut. And I will also say that this movie keeps the worst line from either version of the movie. That really stupid back and forth between Henry Cavill's Clark Kent and Amy Adams' Lois Lane, where she says, "You smell good," and he says, "Did I not before?" That is in the most wooden, weak delivery you ever heard. So, of course, I've got to say that the best scene in this entire movie is the Joker scene with Jared Leto's Joker. It is really cool and it's got an R-rated feel to it, and it makes you wish that the whole movie was that we were just focusing on that element. Because again, it helped the movie end on a high note for me, but at the same time, it left me feeling like, couldn't we have just done that? I mean, they spent $75 million on this thing. If we get a sequel, that would be great, but I don't know that we're going to get a sequel. I don't know I mean, they managed to willpower this movie through, and it'll be interesting to see if Zack Snyder's fan base is as happy with this as they think they'll be. See, because Zack Snyder's movies again are great moments, and this is true of all of his movies, but they don't cohere very well. 300 is probably his classic. It's the one that he's going to be remembered for, and a big part of that is because 300 is by its structure a very simple narrative. 300 guys went to fight an unbeatable army and led by example. That's the whole plot of the movie. I just told you the plot of 300, which I think is a 2 hour movie. It's a visually propelled film. It's a battle movie, like Black Hawk Down. And Zack Snyder is kind of like Ridley Scott in that he can paint a beautiful picture, but whether or not that picture coheres into a story is another thing. So yeah, Zack Snyder, he's got some great moments in this, and what he really needs is he needs to hook up with a producer and an editor, both, who really understand his vision and can work very well with him to help him make a great movie. There's a reason that the guy's career moves in these weird stops and sputters, and it's because his movies. I once heard someone say his movies play best at home, but what that really means is his movies play best when you have the option of pausing them. And yeah, I think a lot of people are probably going to end up watching this in segments anyway. I don't think a lot of people are going to sit down and burn through this whole thing in 4 hours. But yeah, a bunch of great moments, but they don't quite add up to a great movie. It's certainly not a bad movie, and I am genuinely curious how the people who love Zack Snyder and were pushing for this Snyder cut, especially given that he's kind of stepped in a little bit with his fans recently on a live stream, whether they're going to stand by him on this or not. Because oh, and the one thing that I will say I liked more with the Joss Whedon cut is that I liked the montage of the world mourning the loss of Superman at the beginning of the Whedon cut, which is not here in the Snyder cut. There's this weird sense that only Lois Lane really minds that Superman is gone, and that is very odd given how important of a symbol Superman was to the world. Even Suicide Squad touched on that briefly. So that felt a little awkward. So yeah, there's some great moments. I love the scene with the Joker. I want to see a sequel because I want to see more of that, but it'd take a lot to even get to that point. You know, that would I know he said that this was a trilogy, so it would effectively take 2 more movies to get there. So yeah, that would be interesting to see. It's going to be really curious to see if we ever could possibly get that far along in this story. But a lot of that's going to have to do with how many people watch this and how much traffic it drives to HBO Max. So it was worth watching, but I'd suggest watching it in multiple sittings. You'll actually probably get it at the very least in splitting it in half. So I got